Hello, welcome back to ShameOver. I'm Erica Mallery, and I am so excited to be here today with Ty. Ty, I'm going to let you introduce yourself, but just thank you for being here, and I can't wait to get into this conversation.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you for having me, Erica.
Yeah.
So I'm Ty King, and I'm the host of Longterm, a podcast in recovery, which is a podcast about recovery. We're trying to understand it from the perspective of somebody who's never, been addicted to substances, but finding along the way that, I think all human beings have something that they need to recover from.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. So, how did you get into this? How was this podcast birthed?
How was it birthed? I've never been asked it that way before. I've been asked, how'd you get started? And so I'm on the board of governors for the Podcast Academy, which is the international organization that hosts the AMBIes every year. So
Okay.
if you're probably more aware of like the Grammys, right? So the Grammy Awards are put out by the Recording Academy. Well, the
Hmm.
podcast industry also has an academy for that. And so we have the AMBIes, and that's the big podcast awards. So I work a long time alongside NBC Universal's audio division, the founder of Wondery and
Oh, wow.
Amazon Music. And so we work with the top of the industry people all the time.
Sure.
So I'm usually behind the scenes and trying to organize some crazy marketing thing to get people engaged. But I got really curious about recovery myself, just trying to understand, how to put myself in somebody else's shoes that's been there, you know what I mean? And try to understand why is it important? Why do we need it? How do we benefit as just general citizens whenever somebody goes through successful recovery, right? And because I work in the industry, I was looking at some of the shows that, some of the people around me were putting out. And it turns out there weren't any that were really about recovery that were,
Yep.
being produced by iHeart or any of the other big production companies. And so I went a little bit deeper and found, some that were some independent shows that were out there that were pretty like, they call them like micro influencers, right? They have these podcasts, but they're pretty good sized crowds, you know what I mean? But
Yep.
it's not like huge numbers to where you have the,
Sure.
yeah. And I noticed that a lot of them were from people that had lived experience
Mm.
and which was useful. But I wanted to just sort of have it explained to me in a way that was like, I'm completely fresh to this. You know what I mean? I don't know what you're talking about. Like it is its own little world once you get started
Oh,
getting into it,
absolutely.
right?
Yeah.
And so I was like, well, I'll just start a podcast and this will be my journey of learning along the way. And started it, it's like over a year and a half ago now. So, um, and started out, recording with people that had lived experience. And then we went on to policymakers. Then I did ride-alongs with police officers and talking to Supreme Court and just a lot of different perspectives and realizing, okay, I'm starting to notice there's a Venn diagram between, okay, the people that you think, that have or need recovery or they've been in some sort of addiction and the average citizen,
Sure.
usually you can throw a rock and can hit somebody that's been affected by substance abuse, some way, form, or fashion, right? And so even if you think that you don't have any connection whatsoever, like there's a layover of, we all have something that we need to be recovering from, right? Because the people that are using their substances the first time they used came from a decision that was based on something else that happened in their life, right? It's usually an experience or some sort of trauma.
Hmm.
But then there's other things that you can become addicted to as well. I mean, there's lots of things we can become addicted to. That's sort of what I
Yeah.
was learning along the way. But yeah, that's how it got started. Sorry to go on this long tangent, but
No, I love it. So it sounds like you yourself have not had the addiction to whether it's alcohol,
Mhm.
drugs, anything along those lines.
Right. I think my addiction or is my personality, the way I'm wired, is
Mhm.
that once I want to know about something, I will go 1000% in until I know everything about it.
You and my husband are so similar. I believe I told you this before, but he jokes
Mm.
like he will find the end of the internet. So if he gets on a topic, he
Yeah.
keeps researching it until
Yeah.
he like gets back to the same page that he started at. So yeah, you guys are very much aligned in that.
Yeah.
Well, and I do love that your podcast does go in depth to all of that. Like the lived experience, I feel like is obviously number one. One that's my why I'm here, but it's very hard to, for example, take advice from a 500-pound nutritionist that knows all the facts, but isn't
Right.
necessarily doing it themselves or, hasn't necessarily lived through some of those moments.
Hmm.
So I love that you're utilizing that, but getting into the policy making and the science behind it. And, I've seen that you've interviewed psychologists and people that are, working in the programs and dealing with the medical stuff as well. So
Hmm.
it's very full throttle.
Yeah, and then I learned that there is no just one size fits all in recovery. It's got to be very personalized. It's very subjective. And so learning, what generally works for the majority of people, because a lot of the policymakers I've talked to, they put together these like panels of people that have experience, but also people that run recovery organizations and these types of things. And so they end up on the floor in one court or another and discussing about what works and what doesn't. And what they're looking for is what they call evidence-based results, right?
Yeah.
And that just means that they're looking for numbers. How many people went through your program? How many of them are successfully not returning? How many of them not
Mhm.
relapse? But that's not really a marker of success when it comes
Yeah.
to recovery. And so it's so hard to make somebody understand that just because somebody relapsed one time, they can get back on the train. Like that's not the last chance for them, right?
Exactly.
But trying to relay that information when there are a lot of people that just say, well, if you want to get off drugs, just quit, just
Yeah.
stop. That's all you got to
Because
do.
it's that easy.
Yeah, just
Yeah.
stop. Not realizing that it's an actual disease that can take over your life and it rewires your brain, right? And so you think that you need these things. Which is something I really admire about people in recovery, is that, for us, like everyday people, and it's really made me conscious of this myself. Us everyday people, like when we wake up, what do? You probably grab your phone, you go make some coffee, go about your day and be like, oh God, I really do not want to answer these 2,000 emails that are waiting in my inbox, like, but for people in recovery, they have to consciously wake up every day and make a decision of today, I'm going to be better than I was yesterday you
Mm.
know. And I don't think that we think about that. We get kind of comfortable in our daily life, and we're like, yeah, well, we're working towards things and goals and stuff, but not as heavily as like that. You know what I
Sure.
mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, and I forgot where I was going with that, but anyways, we went down several different pathways then.
Well, and I mean, one thing that you definitely alluded to
Mhm.
is that recovery, yeah, it looks different for
Mhm.
everyone. There is no
Yeah.
one size fits all by any means, but it does not discriminate. And I think that's
Mm-mm.
one thing. Like like when you see homeless people on the street, like you
Yeah.
can make the, observation or make the assumptions of, what's going on for them. But when it comes to alcohol, that is something everybody uses. Like literally the
Right.
most not only widely used drug, but the most widely accepted and pushed upon and everything. So
Hmm.
it's you have that, then you have other more hardcore drugs. I did hear recently. I'm a big Mo News fan. I don't know if you're familiar with that podcast, but if not, highly recommend it. But apparently like cocaine is back and it is like the most popular or fastest growing in popularity drug most recently for whatever
Mm.
reason. So it's like, obviously when it comes to that you have the assumption that it's a certain type of person that kind of
Right.
uses that, but is that the case or not? And that's
Oh
what's really
no.
fascinating when it comes to what we're talking about is
Hmm.
it's not just this drug is for this person, this drug is for this class of people. It is very anyone can have access to anything essentially.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you may think that a substance user or an addict looks like somebody you've seen on a movie from Skid Row, but
Exactly.
but they're also the attorneys that you see in courtrooms. They're also the people you work around. They're the doctors that are actually prescribing themselves medicine. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
non-discriminatory.
Well, no, that's a great point because I know that is one thing that has come out not necessarily more recently, but that doctors do have a lot of time struggle with that. I don't know if you watched The Pit. If not,
I
it
haven't
is like,
watched it yet. I've heard really
oh
good
my
things.
God, it's the best show. I'm obsessed. It's so good. But like watching it, you're just like, this is not natural for a human being to be under this much stress for a period of time. And granted, that's not like every day is not XYZ. I'm not going to spoil anything for those who have not watched it, including yourself.
Yeah.
But it comes down to like nervous system regulation. And when you're living at these high levels of stress or trauma or anything like that, like there has to be a way to quiet the noise, to calm down. And once you find drugs or alcohol, it is very hard to find anything else that scratches the itch outside of
Mhm.
those.
Yeah.
So
And
what is because you've interviewed such incredible people, is
Yeah.
there any story that really stands out to you as far as like a moment of like wow or aha for you
Yeah.
or anything along those lines?
Yeah, I mean, several things, along my microphone keeps tearing my shirt down. Um, talking to people who were like psychologists, right? And talking about how that works, but also talking to the doctors. And so combining the different two of being like, what is the likelihood that you yourself could become somebody that is addicted to something, even not an alcohol? So
Yeah.
the self-discovery part of this along the way for me was that I realized, well, I've always known that my father was an alcoholic, right? And so it was abusive, used to beat my mother. I spent the majority of my childhood in, battered women's shelters up until the age that they wouldn't accept me anymore because I was too old.
Wow.
And so I moved out on my own, 17, finished high school, and moved on with my life. And then that was enough for my mom to finally break away from the cycle of abuse. But if there wasn't money for anything else, there was always money for alcohol.
Mm,
And we knew he was awake every time you hear the can pop open, right?
yeah.
You got about 20 minutes apiece, and then everything's about to go to hell. You may find him, passed out in the yard in the morning when you're going to school. You just kind of got to walk over him and go to the school bus to go get, So I knew it wasn't normal at the time,
Yeah.
but you don't realize just how that is just addiction of its own. You know what I mean? Like I
Sure.
knew he was alcoholic. I knew he drank a lot. You know what I mean? But I was in survival mode too, so I didn't think too much
Oh,
about that
100%. Yeah.
portion of it, right? Until I was well into my adult years. And this wasn't even part of my mindset whenever I was curious about recovery and trying to learn about it. And it didn't even occur to me until like, maybe 20 episodes in or so. And I'm like, oh, you know what? This might be part of my curiosity, may have come from
Totally. Like
this. Didn't
subconsciously.
realize. Yeah, yeah. And so talking to these doctors and psychologists are talking about how, the alcoholism and that addiction and the need to have that alcohol can be passed down, generationally, genetically to your
Yes.
children. And so I have the likelihood that I could have easily become the same thing. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and so that's scary to think about. And for me, who I've I hated him, when I was growing up, and to have forced myself to be the complete opposite of him in every single way. I mean, that was
Yeah.
my life's mission. Don't be like him at all. That's not who I want to be. And then to think, oh man, I could have so easily fallen into that. That's been sort of eye-opening, but. So that's been like this the self portion, but like listening to other people's stories of a couple of them come to mind. One of them was a combat veteran, right? Returned from one of the wars, I think it was Iraq, and then had seen so many of the people that were, with him there die on the field,
Mm,
watched them, witnessed it, and all that stuff, came back and had such survivor's guilt and such trouble trying to reassimilate back into civilian life
mm,
that he himself fell into alcoholism. And then
sure.
that just escalated into other drugs. And it's like just trying to wash all that out of your mind, try to numb yourself to the feeling of all those things that you're not really prepared for psychologically. And so, luckily he found recovery, eventually, and is being an advocate for that. Um, and another one is the author of Slip. So I interviewed her, and it was something I didn't really expect because it's not substance abuse. It is a different kind of addiction, which is an eating disorder that
Yeah.
she developed whenever she was very young, very like just barely a teenager when
Yeah.
her mother passed away.
Mm,
And her mother passed away just very suddenly. And so Mallory developed this eating disorder to where she just would not eat. Like she was so malnourished and was staying the same size as was. But it was because psychologically, she thought if she could stay the same size she was when her mom passed, that she could still be sort of near her. She could be close to her
ugh.
mom that way. Yeah.
Oh my God, that gave me the chills.
Yeah. So, and she's called it out. She wrote a whole book about it, and so it's incredible. And now she's doing her book tour and talking to other people and learning so many other people's stories that are similar like that. But it's not just it. There's a stigma and there's a fear of talking about these things out loud, right?
Yeah.
And so we don't really share those stories. You might look at someone and can tell that they're suffering. Then there's other people that look like they're perfectly fine. They're functioning in society, but you don't really know what they're dealing with because we don't have these conversations because it's either just not socially acceptable or you're afraid of what people are going to say about you, what they're going to judge about you.
Hmm.
And I don't know. That's kind of my another part of why I do the podcast is like I want to just open these conversations up on the floor so that we can advance as society, as humans, that are living on the same planet. Like we're not going to get better if we don't address the maladies, right?
100%. Thank you for sharing all that. And I mean, one, I'm definitely gonna have to check out that book Slip, so I'll look into that after this.
Yeah.
But as far as like your experience, and that to your point, like it is very, it looks different in each household. Like you knew
Mhm.
something wasn't right, you were in survival mode,
Yeah.
but you also like that was your truth. That's all you knew. So you didn't have like, a different type of household that was always calm and maybe didn't have alcohol or never had that be an issue. But there are so many households that keep it all together when it
Hmm.
comes to the outside world, but the inside world is hell. So, similar to your experience, but no one on the outside would ever see or believe it. And that's where it is just crazy to think like how this happens. And with the eating disorder, like for me, what I've realized through this journey, consumption's consumption. It doesn't matter what that is. It's when you're using something, consuming something
Yeah.
to feel better, to not feel, to whatever that is. Once you're working on that area, it's likely going to go somewhere else. So it's being fully aware of that, because I see all the time people who, can start working with me in the beginning. They're like, oh, well, I notice I'm spending more time on social media, or I'm starting to
Yeah.
spend more, or I'm eating more food, because especially like alcohol has a lot of calories. We're really aware of that. So when we cut out the alcohol, it's like, oh, well, I still need that sugar. I have extra calories, so let me go eat that brownie that I wouldn't normally eat type thing.
Hmm.
And that's where that cross addiction comes in, and where a lot of,
Yeah.
I mean, I've talked to so many people who are in, certain type of programs that have to do with alcohol that previously were in like Overeaters Anonymous type
Hmm.
thing. So it is crazy how much they do overlap and correlate with each other.
Yeah, for sure. And I don't know, it sort of helps me learn a lot about myself. But like there are so many different things that you can fall into, but you're not realizing that these are symptoms of a bigger problem that you witnessed or something, right?
Exactly.
One of my another story just popped up in my mind. It reminded me of this. So it wasn't about addiction, but it was about Kay Cordell. She's an elderly lady now, but she does a lot of policy making and things like that, and works with victims' rights groups and stuff. But she grew up in a very rural town, and with her father. Her father was the same type, was very abusive and that type of thing. But she ended up discovering, along with her sister, whenever she was a child, that her father was kidnapping children in the area. And also he had like murdered a couple of people and thrown them in this cave on this property. And so anyway, she discovered that her father was a serial killer in her teenage years. And it really damaged her. Yeah, it's pretty wild. And the cave is there, and she's talking about how she went back as an adult to go find the bodies again, and then having leading law enforcement to them. It's a wild story, but talking about like how that affected her for the rest of her life,
Mhm.
she kept falling into these seriously abusive relationships because of that, right? Like the seeking of a partner that seems to be, supportive and everything that you looked for in a human. And so if they exert those characteristics right off the bat, immediately fall for it. This is who that person is. That first
Totally.
impression is everything, right?
Mhm.
Um, but it's also how people fall into cult mentalities
Yeah.
as well. I've talked to people, psychologists about that. And it's like, how do people actually, get suckered into this? Like,
Yeah.
because this is, well, believe it or not, most of the time it happens in a coffee shop where this charismatic character sits across from you and they're so nice, they're kind to you. And actually, there's some bias confirmation. They're saying
Hmm.
some things out loud that maybe you thought internally, but you were too afraid to speak. And so you have that relationship built in now. And you're like, oh, well, I think
Totally.
we're on the same ground. And so then you start tying your self-esteem and your self-worth into this other human being. And that's how you get led down this whole path of
Mhm.
self-destructiveness. But for myself, I realized, my, not knowing what a good marriage or a relationship or anything looked like, I realized like looking back retrospectively, like how fast I was just getting into these relationships because somebody showed me interest.
Yeah.
And so even if I didn't find them attractive beforehand, I immediately did after they were
Yeah.
like, I want you. And,
Yeah.
oh, okay, great. And it never turned out good. It never turned out the way I wanted it to. But being conscious of that and realizing it, I don't know, it just seems like the more we work on ourselves and the more we listen to other people's stories, the more we learn
Mhm.
about ourselves and we can be more conscious about how we live and making those decisions throughout the day.
100%. And I know that's why you and I are both in this space is to share the stories, to make it an open space, because that is how a lot of us do learn, especially if we're audible. What's the type of learning when it's all audio? Not audible, that's my reading thing. But anyway, you know what I'm trying
Right.
to say.
Auditory, right.
Um,
Right.
so I am very curious because you had brought up like the generational thing, because this is
Hmm.
very generational. And I know that, I mean, trauma can get passed down through genetics and,
Yeah.
things like addiction and more that the the ease at which you can get addicted more than anything. Most people do everything they can not to become their parents, for example, or not to end up with someone like their parents. And
Yep.
that's exactly what does not happen, right?
Yes.
But it sounds like you have actually figured out like this is, I'm not going to become this type of person, and you're
Yeah.
actually sticking to that. So how have you found success with that? Like that's incredible.
I think, well, I don't know about success, I'm aware of it now. You know what I mean? And
100%.
which
Yeah.
was helps me put my foot down and be like, okay, none of this anymore. You know what I mean? I'm going to do something different. Still haven't figured out how to like go back into that, field of like, because a lot of people are like dating online and they're doing all these other things, right?
Yeah.
And so you never really know who's on the other side of that. And so people fall into a lot of bad situations because of
Yeah.
that as well. But I think knowing where to set your bar, where to set your standards is huge. I was talking to my mom about it, and she's like, I worry that with you and your brother, we worked so hard to make sure that you weren't like your dad that I'm afraid that I pushed you in the opposite extreme to where
Yeah.
you're such a pacifist, to where like you let people run over you. And so, like, how do you readjust that bar?
Yeah.
Not to be on one end where you're abusive and the other end
Sure.
where you just let people completely steamroll you. Like, where is that middle ground? And how do you find that? I still don't have those answers, and that's something I'm still on the path of journey of learning on right now.
Well, personally, from what I've seen, and obviously moderation is, finding that middle ground is a big part of what I work on. But that the two biggest things for that is awareness and mindfulness. Like when you have those two things, it is a lot easier to be successful than not, especially in the big picture consistency.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that
So are
makes
you and your
complete
mom pretty
sense.
close?
Yeah, yeah. Luckily, my mom, survived all that,
Yeah.
and she's doing very well, and she's been married to my stepdad, who's, a really good guy, and so yeah, they're
Amazing.
happy and living that country life in Arkansas. So
I know from listening to your podcast that, which it makes so much sense, but I'm such a city girl, like it never really registered as much to me. But one thing that you've definitely talked about on your podcast is how rural life can impact things. Because, like you said, like
mm,
if I were to have any type of emergency, whether it was, substance related or not, I could get to a hospital immediately. An ambulance could get to me
yeah,
immediately. Obviously, in rural environments, that's not the case. And when it comes to substance abuse and anything along those lines, that can make things just that much scarier. So what is something that you've really learned about that, or even talking with people in policy, like that they've noticed, or anything to help people
yeah.
more in rural environments?
Well, I mean, when it comes to like addiction or substance use or anything like that, like if you're in a rural area, which the state I live in, it was, Arkansas is like 90% rural area, right? So there are very few
Yeah,
cities, and they're very, those populations are very secluded, and you're
sure.
surrounded by forests and dirt roads and everything else. But I mean, I travel a lot now because of my podcasting job, you know what I mean? Being able to see other states, and I'm saying, oh, well, we're not the only one, especially over here in the flyover states. There's still a lot of natural land. A lot of people are suffering from this. But even out towards, Nevada, you've got Las Vegas
Mhm.
there, but then there's everywhere else around it. Um,
Totally.
but whenever somebody is in a rural area and they have an emergency, it's going to be really hard to save them with Narcan if you don't have it on you, right? And so if they
Mhm.
need emergency medicine, they're going to have to wait for the ambulance to come all the way out there, which might be 30, 45-minute ride, and then ride all the way back to the hospital, which is another 30. And so we don't know if that person's going to survive or not. And more and more of these smaller hospitals that are even available to those rural people are being defunded this year. And so they're losing that funding, which means we've already had several hospitals in those types of areas close,
Oh,
and
well.
more are expected to be closing, within throughout 2026 and beyond, unless we figure out some way to fund those hospitals again. And then you're just dependent on the bigger cities to have to go out, which is even further. So you don't really have a chance when it comes to that, especially if fentanyl is involved, right? Which is a huge
Mhm.
problem because like we've got to have an immediate assistance or we don't have anything. Um, and so it's great to have, AA groups and things like that in your county or little small towns at your local churches or community centers, whatever like that. And those are great, but they're not going to provide the medical emergency help that you need whenever you
Yeah.
need that in case it ever does happen. And you'd be surprised by how much it happens.
Mhm.
And yeah, going back to the come full circle about my dad, he ended up dying this year in February
Mhm.
in that same house where all this stuff happens. You know what I mean? And I really didn't, I was struggled with like how to even feel about this, but
Oh,
you
I'm
know,
sure. Yeah.
but he died, because it was causation of his lifelong, alcoholic behavior, but also apparently he had starting making meth and selling it to other people in the neighborhood. And anyways, all those things, caught him. He called the hospital or called his sister or somebody, and they tried to make it out to him, couldn't get to him in time. So, but he was living in one of those rural areas. And yeah, so I mean it happens, and so that's one of the it sounds good to be able to, I'm gonna go live in my own land, and I'm gonna be free of people. If I want to see neighbors,
Totally.
I can make
Yeah.
that
But
trip,
it's
but
my
I don't
choice.
have to. Yeah, if I want to walk around and outside and drink coffee and not have to see another human being, I can buy this piece of land up in the mountains and do this. But like when it comes to when you need other humans to come and save your
Mhm.
life, it's you kind of need to be closer to society because of that. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, and I had to kind of look into because obviously fentanyl, like we've all heard it, we're all more
Yeah.
aware of it, but I didn't really understand, like, because in my mind, like, oh, it's being laced in drugs that people are already doing, but then I
Right.
found out that it was literally things like Xanax, that like
Yep.
I could easily take one of those, so it's
Right.
not just someone that was trying to get meth that it was laced with fentanyl and that's why it was a bad situation. It was like, that's also why it's impacting a lot of
Mhm.
high school kids, college kids who think they're just doing like Adderall or Xanax, and instead it's turns into a
Yeah.
very scary, if not deadly situation.
Yeah, your medications that you get prescribed by the doctors can have any of those numbers of things that they told you to fear.
Yeah.
From opioids to fentanyl, any of those things can be inside of those medications, and some people get addicted to those.
Yeah.
Pain pills are another one that people get addicted
Totally.
to. So I travel with Narcan. That luckily our state was one of the ones that passed the law where you can carry Narcan. So I keep that in my glove
Amazing.
box just in case I see somebody overdosing. And I mean it's not hard to take the training. It takes like 5 minutes, and then
Okay.
they pass those out. So but yeah, that's kind of what it takes is all of us working together and trying to figure out how to address the issues. And there's I think three different parts of recovery or helping with addiction itself. And it's prevention, intervention, and then justice if that needs to be involved in the end. So
Totally.
yeah,
Well, and for me, I mean, I think the number one thing that we don't deal with at all is mental health, because all of this does come down to mental
yes,
health a lot of the times. That's, the guy that you talked about that came back from war. Like, I know we do not do enough for our veterans at all, like not even
no,
scratching the surface for the type of mental health that they need. And just changing the stigma around it because
yeah.
a lot of veterans they don't necessarily want to go to talk therapy, like that just it has a negative connotation for a lot of people, and it's like why, like it's having a conversation like what we're
Yeah.
doing, it's just something that's powerful that can really make you think differently or help you heal in ways that you didn't realize you necessarily needed, or.
It's calling somebody, it's such a detractor. Like it's almost I don't know. You got to weigh out the weigh out the pros and cons of when you call somebody that goes to into the military, no matter what branch it is, and like you're
Yep.
automatically a hero now, right? You're an American
Yeah.
hero. And because of that, because thank you for your service and all of that we're giving those to people, like we internally we think of these people, we put them up on a pedestal because of
Hmm.
that. They're like they're a hero, they're something that I aspire to be, so
Yeah.
they can handle their own problems. I'm the one that's got problems and I need to handle mine, you know what I mean? Or
Yeah.
somebody else, you see somebody that's on the street panhandling or whatever. But you don't know, a lot of them are also veterans. And so the resources from the VA are fantastic. They could be more robust, but there's just so much that people do. There's a similar pattern between people that reassimilate back into society from the military and people that are trying to go back into society after being released from prison. Like
Mm,
there's a very similar feel, but one is held as a hero while the other one is held as a villain. And
100%.
so, yeah.
Well, and it's, I don't know. I'm very much, I always butcher the quote, so I know I'm going to mess it up, but basically, rising tide raises all ships. Like,
Hmm.
that's very much my mentality. Like, how can we not like come together? And, because I think even, politics aside, regardless of what side anyone's on, like, I feel like at the end of the day, most of us do really have the best interest for the country, other people, the best interest at heart. But it's, that one or two things that we're really passionate about that like makes us so
Yeah,
separate, but it's like how can we not like build this together, lift each other up,
exactly.
because that is, I mean, that's kind of the whole point of like the country that was created, right? And I think what everybody does want in all over the world is they want the best for themselves, for their family, and others as well.
Yeah, yeah, and I always want to highlight the need for peer support, and that
Yes.
is not just in recovery from substance abuse or whatever it is,
Sure.
but like we all need that,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
we've all gone through something, and so we need that peer support. We need to hear from somebody that's been down there in the same thing that you've been through. They made it out alive and figured something out that worked for them, and maybe their method doesn't work for you, but at least you can have the coaching and you can be walking along somebody else that's been through the same situation and come out of it alive to help you do the same. I heard a quote earlier last week, and I've been saying it ever since because I was like, that's beautiful. But I heard that people with wounds listen to people with scars. And I was like,
Oh, I
that's
love
so
that.
perfect. I love that. Yeah.
Oh, I'm taking that. That is a great one. Yeah.
Right?
No, but it is like it gives hope, but I feel like the people with scars in this in this example, assuming that they're not, like self-righteous, whatever,
Sure.
they
Yeah.
can approach it with such less judgment and, not only provide that hope and, the roadmap that they use that works
Mhm.
for them, even though, like you said, like my roadmap is not going to work for everyone else by any means,
Right. Right.
but it's that hope that I've done it, you can do it too. But also let me show you the way in a non-judgmental way because I know what it feels like to feel that shame, to feel
Hmm.
that guilt, regret, judgment, all of that.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And so I don't know through my work in recovery, like I go to a lot of behavioral health, conferences,
Yeah.
and you hear a big, mix of different types of stories. And so that's, I count myself as lucky being able to hear these people's stories of survival and how they, become better humans. Like it feels like it encourages me, to do the same. But I also get invited um, to speak. It feels weird, and I feel like an imposter because I've been called a normie, a couple of times by other people. I'm like, "Oh, you're a normie," and I'm like, I guess," but like we all have something, right?
Totally.
Um,
Yeah.
but like this weekend, I've been invited to. There's a little town in Arkansas. It's called Wilson, Arkansas,
Okay.
and it's a tiny little town. Nothing but cotton fields there. But this a wealthy guy, came in and he bought it a few years ago, and then built like a little airport. And so they fly in like world-class chefs, and it's like a little thing. Anyways,
Cool.
it's a really cool little thing. I never knew it existed, but they invited me to come out and to record a live, podcast on stage at their theater. And I'm like, Me though, like it doesn't feel right. But they're like, yeah, we've really needed recovery in this area for a very long time, and they, for whatever reason, consider to be a strong voice for recovery and advocates.
Yeah.
So happy to be that, happy to fulfill that. I don't see myself as that, but just trying to be a thread in a bigger tapestry, right? So just trying to use my talents to do wherever we can to help.
Well, you're spreading the message, and that's the most important thing, and doing
Yeah,
so in such like a loving, informative way.
yeah, yeah. Appreciate that. I try to.
Yeah. So by normie, or if you don't mind me asking, so do you drink alcohol at all, or do you not touch it just based on your previous experience?
I mean, there was like, of course, in my early 20s,
Sure.
you have the party days where you're trying things out. And so,
Hmm.
but that didn't last very long with me. And it's like, I don't know, past few years, it's been like every once in a while, but like,
Okay.
I don't know. I just think I'm done with it. Um,
No, I love that. And the reason why I ask is I feel like it's so hard. Like in the beginning, I remember this for me, but I definitely see it with people when I start working with them, is getting over that hurdle of not drinking when they're at a social event or something along those lines,
yeah,
or the fear of like, are people going to ask? Are they going to assume I have a problem? Are they whatever? Have
yeah.
you dealt with that? And how do you, I guess, show up with confidence? And it's not about like having to have something in your hand.
I'm gonna say it's different on the situations. And
Sure.
so if we do, let's say I'm meeting people at a restaurant or something, they're getting drinks, but I'm not gonna get a drink. I'm perfectly fine with it. It doesn't bother me at all.
Yeah.
And so it's not a big deal. I don't feel pressured to have drinks and like whatever. But if I'm going to meet with other people that are in recovery, I know not to go to a place that has, alcoholic drinks or even to
Yeah.
attempt that, right? And so I'm at the very most, we'll have like a mocktail bar, which is a lot of the fundraisers for recovery organizations to get those. And so
Mhm.
um, there's another thing that I'm going to be exploring. I'm talking to people that are experts in it to try, or quote unquote experts on it. But there's something that people are missing, that social drinking aspect but
Mhm.
they're in recovery. And so these new bars are popping up across the US called kava bars.
Yep.
I know we talked about that, and I'm excited to talk to some people that know way more about it than I do. But it's not FDA regulated yet, and so I don't know what the true effects are, if this is a good thing or a bad thing. But yeah, I don't know. It's just so easy to trade one addiction for another as well. I remember I think of my grandparents, whenever they stopped smoking, right? They stopped smoking cigarettes and then they started eating those little dum-dum suckers. And then it was just all the time until they gained weight.
Oh my God,
Uh,
that's funny. Yeah. Well, and I mean, I know cigarettes specifically, so
yeah,
many people, when they stop smoking, they do gain quite a bit of weight because they're
hmm
used to like, putting
right.
something to their mouth constantly. So
That
it's
oral
just that
fixation.
motion alone.
Hmm.
Yeah. Oh man, that's fascinating. So if there was like, from all the conversations that you've had, from all the everything that you've like digested and internalized, I guess, if there was one or two ways that someone like me could like help in this area outside of obviously what I'm doing, but like any listeners, what
Yeah.
kind of comes to mind?
Oh my gosh. So the neat, I mean, the easiest thing to do is to go to an organization and be like, how can I help? Because everybody's got something to provide. Either
Sure.
if it's not like, monetary donations, which they're always asking for, right? You could always donate that. But I think more valuable than money to any type of organization that helps people in recovery is volunteering. And
Mm.
whether that is volunteering your time to, whatever, put together care packages or something like that, or if you own a business and you want to give something that can help and give back, that's absolutely great. So I've seen everything from, dental offices pairing up with recovery places because a lot of those people don't have insurance and they'll be like, hey, we'll do free teeth cleaning.
Oh,
Come in
amazing.
yeah. And so it's just a great service that they're offering for that. And then there's also, and it's a huge, impact
Mhm.
on your health whenever you're able to do that. And then others are like painting classes, almost like the painting with a twist type
Like,
of thing, but
sure,
it's
yeah.
but it's without the twist. But people find it so like there's so much to it. Like you were talking about the importance of mental health, right? And so creativity is part of that. As us as humans, like whenever we feel like we're expressing ourselves and discovering ourselves, like you feel like you're on top of that Maslow's pyramid of hierarchy of the needs and
Sure.
and so art is just so simple. Like just
Yes.
a simple little canvas with some paints. And you can even give them a subject matter that they can paint, or it's like, okay, now put down whatever you're feeling right now. Like that
Mhm.
is so therapeutic and it's so helpful for people. And so there's just all kinds of small ways. I will say that make sure you do your research on any organization that you reach out to that you want to, because there are bad players in the field.
Always.
And I was having this conversation yesterday about, Southern California, about how you could walk outside, throw a rock, and you'll hit three different recovery centers. But next week you'll check, and two of those are gone, and only one remains, but two others have sprung up. And so it's because the funding comes and goes, and then
Yeah,
they pop up almost overnight because of funding. And then, no. So a lot of people go into it to get money from, off of it, and
oh,
they use it
totally.
like
Yeah.
an industry. Yeah. So, but there are a lot of really, 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 really good ones that are out there as well. And I would say one trusted way of finding out who those are is to go to your United Way. United
Okay.
Way will be connected to them once because they've already done all the vetting ahead of time, and so they'll tell you which recovery organizations are like the good, high-rated ones that they could really use their help. So
Oh, I love that.
yeah.
And that's good to know about United Way. And I
Mhm.
know you had some on recently that I had listened to. And one thing that I did want to bring up because I was shocked at it was like 92% or something. Don't quote me on that. But for people that go into like rehab that relapse, I was shocked that the number was as high as it was. But I think that even for me being, doing this, it's just so powerful to know that, to shed that much more light on it and grace on it, because like
Yeah.
this is not a you go away for 30 days and magically you're cured. Like that's not it at all. It's
Well,
like,
yeah, you're changing the way that your brain is wired and the way that your physiology expects you to act. And so it's kind of like, if you were to change your diet drastically, right? And you're like, okay, this week I'm only eating vegetables and we're doing, steamed cauliflower, no meats. We're not going to do any meats, and we're going to do low calorie, high protein foods. Like it's so hard to stick to that, right? And like you go back and the consequences aren't nearly as high. But I mean,
totally.
it's the same concept where you're trying to change the way that you operate and what you do and how your brain, deals with stress,
Hmm.
how you find pleasure in just life. We
Yes.
like good
I mean,
flavors, but
pleasure
if we,
is the number one thing there.
yes,
Absolutely. Well,
right.
and I mean, I relate to what I do a lot, but I feel like it's the same for everything that you're talking about as kind of like the biggest loser complex,
Mm,
because almost everyone on the show, once they got home, at least within a certain period of time, gained nearly all the weight back. And it
yeah.
was, yeah, when you're in this controlled environment where every meal is being made for you, you're being forced to talk, you are, the triggers are not there, the stress isn't there, you have cooks, you have trainers pushing you 24/7, like you better be successful in that environment, right? But the second you go back to normal life, like everything that you had in that, previously is
Yeah.
what is automatic, basically runs on autopilot in your brain. So
And that really further exemplifies like how important it is to have a support structure around you.
yes.
You need those people that are coaching you through it. You need the people that are holding you accountable to what you say you're going to do and to give those good actions towards yourself.
Yes. And on that note, I would definitely say whether, like, depending on what side of the coin you're on in these
Hmm.
situations, when it comes to support, know what that looks like. Because I know sometimes I'll work with, I'll have conversations and they'll be like, well, I don't feel supported. Like, my husband brought home my favorite bottle of wine. And I'm like, okay,
Right.
well, what would support look like?
Yeah.
And a lot of times they don't necessarily know how to answer that. And granted, that changes, it grows. You have to experience the situations to really know that. But if someone's coming back from rehab, for example, ask them how you can support them and what specifically it looks like. And as you're
Mhm.
going through it on the other side, know what that looks like. Like for me, early on with my husband, I was very much like, I don't want you to change your drinking habits at all. This is a me thing, not you. the how you can support me is don't ask me if I want to drink tonight. Don't
Yeah.
ask me if I want to refill. Don't ask me anything. Like
Hmm.
if I want to drink, I will let you know. I am going to have a drink tonight. If I
Yeah.
want more, I will get it myself. Like, because otherwise it's too easy to have the negotiation come in, but being very specific with what that looks like.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, there's nothing wrong with moderation, but like you were saying, if that just that right in itself, where it's like, don't ask me this because
Yeah,
now you put me in a position to where like, man, I really do want that, but I know that I shouldn't. And
exactly.
so like, it, we've got a 70% chance that I'm probably going to go ahead and do that. And so being aware of what I know some people don't like this word, but triggers, or your
Yeah.
activators, right? And so what are those situations and things that you can put somebody through that makes them sort of revert back to those actions? Be aware of
Mhm.
those and avoid them. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, and I like that you said, like, if you are meeting with people in recovery, like, you're never going to go to a place that serves it so that that is there. So, like, having other options, like, hey, let's go to Starbucks or let's go on a walk, or, there are so many different things.
Hmm.
And I love that you brought up art and painting because I am so type A, like the paint and sip, whatever. I hated those places, like pure anxiety, total,
Yeah.
yeah. But I got into paint by numbers.
Oh, okay.
It is honestly the most therapeutic thing I've ever done. Like, I can't even explain it, but not only do you have to focus and be like really present,
Hmm.
but it's actually it does something similar with the brain as what you get with certain types of therapy, where it is, kind of going back and forth. So keeping your hands busy is so huge, especially during those witching hours or, the tough moments where you are like, oh, I need a hit. I need a drink. I
Yeah.
need a whatever. Keep your hands busy, just not with your phone is the biggest thing. Don't do it with your phone.
And if you're task oriented in your way of thinking, like that's so helpful to be like, okay, I know this color goes in all of the threes. I'm painting all of these, and eights are this color. And so like you're building little by little by little by little until you have the full thing done at the end, and then you see, and so it's progressive. I'll say last thing. I won't take it too long, but one of the things I did start working on myself with a few years ago was I know it's kind of nerdy, but if like anybody plays any like RPG games, which I never was, and I never was like I don't see the appeal to this, but I had it explained to me in a book of
What's
like how
RPG?
like Dungeons and Dragons type of
Oh,
things. You
okay. Gotcha.
know what I
Gotcha.
mean? Like where you're building out a character or a video game, whatever.
Sure.
But like if your character is able to build up, stats, right? If it's like, okay, here's your charisma bar, here's your intelligence bar, here's your life and all these different things, um, wisdom and all of that. And I was like, okay, what if I made this for myself? Because I've never
I
been
love
really,
that.
drawn to that, but I was like, okay, what does level 10 tie look like in all these different areas? What skills give me these abilities and things? If how many languages do I know if I have this, wisdom over here? And so I started doing that. So that was sort of like my macro goals of like, this is what I want to reach. This is what peak tie looks like. This is what I want to
Yeah.
get to. And then breaking it down until 10 smaller goals to even reach that. And so where I'm having to build on these smaller goals and accomplish those in order to reach the big picture. And so if it is learning, if I want to be able to speak, three different languages, I'm going to start speaking, okay, basic Spanish. That's key one. Then being able to have conversations in Spanish, and then I can move on to something else, and then other Latin languages. But yeah, and that's why, just educating myself on everything I possibly can. But I think that's hugely, kind of like your paint by numbers, what you were talking about. It's the same concept. You're working on very, very small pieces of a larger goal, but then once all those
Yes.
pieces are together, you get to sort of stand back and look at it and be like, wow, look what I did.
Yes. Well, and I love that you work backwards because that's where I found the most success too, is
Mhm.
like, okay, what's the big picture look like? And then
Yeah.
how, like, if I'm starting here, I want to end here. How do I actually get there? And sometimes if you do the start, getting there is a lot harder than working backwards and being like, okay, so before this, it would look like this, and then that. So are you learning a new language or two?
So I did. I studied, well, textbook, Spanish and
Yeah,
French. Yeah. And so two.
amazing.
I tried Italian. Now it was like because the three of them are derived from,
Sure, yeah.
Latin and they're similar enough. Ooh, Italian's hard. I don't know why it is for me, but it's Italian. It's
Well, I speak very little Spanish, but I can say when I did travel in Italy,
Mhm.
because I did not know any Italian, if I would speak to them in Spanish, they would know what I was saying and be able to reply to me.
That's a
So
great
in
way to
case you ever
push
go
it.
to Italy,
Yeah.
if you've got Spanish down, you're
Yeah.
probably pretty okay. Italians, please don't kill me for saying that because I know I'm probably way off, but you at least like worked with me, so there you go.
Close enough. Yeah. I was
Yeah.
watching the Amanda Knox the new Amanda Knox
Oh, I haven't seen
documentary
it
that's
yet.
on right now.
Yeah.
Oh my God, it's so good. But like a lot of it, they're speaking Italian, and like she was like speaking fluently. I was like, that's crazy. Yeah, I've been in talks with her too. So we're her team is trying to get her on long term before the end of the year. Right now, she's filming something with Hulu. But after that, we're supposed to talk, and I really want to talk and express and understand from her point of view.
Yeah.
We don't have to go over the case and all that stuff. I mean, like everybody's heard that a million times. But I'm really interested because she's talked about how hard it was for her to come back to America after all this is over. And you've got people that see her as an absolute, oh, you're a foul human being. And there's other
Yeah.
people like, oh, you were wrongly done. And so how do you recover from that situation? Because that is
Mm.
something completely unique. And I think if somebody that's been through something that tough can come through on
Yeah.
their situation, then that'd be sort of inspiring to other people. Be like, well, I can make it through mine, especially. Yeah.
Oh my God, I love that. And
Yeah.
I found out because of the new it's not a is it a documentary docuseries? It's more like a
Hmm.
yeah.
They're
Anyway,
doing like reenactments. Yeah. It's like
yes.
acted. Yeah.
Yeah. But if I'm correct, Monica Lewinsky actually worked with her on it. And that to me was
Yes.
like such an incredible thing to see
Right.
someone who, like, their stories are completely different.
Right.
But at the end of the day, they have such commonalities, just,
Hmm.
being completely destroyed in the public eye. And that was before social media. Like, could you imagine now if that were to happen?
No,
Like,
not at all.
it's just, ugh, yeah.
Where they're putting headlines out about you and making nicknames, the Foxy Noxy thing that they were calling her out there. And it's like, make
Yeah.
you sound like just such a temptress that was
No,
also a
exactly.
serial killer. It's insane. Yeah.
Oh my
How
God.
do you deal that
Oh,
when you're on a
well,
public stage? Yeah.
I love that that opportunity is going to be coming for you guys, and I can't wait to hear what she has to say, and especially that it's not about like about what happened to her over
Right,
there, but
right,
like coming back to life because that's I feel like she's probably not really asked much about that or able to really process that and
right.
feel like a normal human being because her life was just upended, out of her
Yeah,
control, and just ugh, yeah,
yeah, for
awesome.
sure.
Well, thank you so, so, so much for your time. I've loved this. I love everything that you do, and I'm just so grateful that you are doing what you're doing to destigmatize this, normalize just life that we're all living together. And so please keep doing what you're doing. And do you have anything, I guess, how can people find you and anything else that I maybe didn't
Mhm.
ask or cover that you wanted to make sure we covered before we go?
No, I think we pretty much covered it. But yeah, if people want to come find the podcast, it's called Long Term, a podcast in recovery. Long terms all together, one word. You can go to longtermpod.com and it has links to all of the YouTube and all the audio podcast platforms as well, including
Awesome.
your episodes coming out. Yeah.
Yay, can't wait. Well, thank you again so much. It's just been a pleasure, and I know you're doing such incredible work. So thank you, thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Erica.
Right.